Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Bree, and today's reading vlog is going to be reading horror books. It has been full spooky season right now, and I've just been really wanting to read some horror. So when I was going through the list of books I wanted to read, there was just so many that I wanted to get to, and so I had to narrow it down. So I narrowed it down to 5 books that I think I'm just really looking forward to. So the first book I have is The Hacienda by Isabel Cañas, and this is a gothic horror that is basically, I think it's supposed to be Rebecca meets, what do they say? Rebecca meets Mexican Gothic, which I haven't read Mexican Gothic, but I just love this gothic setting. I feel like a gothic story is really for me, and so I want to get to this one. So this is following Beatrice, and her father has just passed after the Mexican War for Independence, and so her and her mom are kind of forced to live with these family members who don't want them, and so she is offered this marriage by this guy, and she takes it because she has no other choice. And so when she goes to his house, the hacienda, in the countryside, there is a lot of spooky things happening, and she believes the house may be haunted, and then she gets involved with a priest who is going to help her. And yeah, it's just a gothic haunting story, so I think it's going to be perfect for this spooky season. Then I'm going to get to one that I've had on my TBR for a while, and that is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. I've heard this is very mixed reviews by people. Either people love it or hate it, so I'm really interested to see where I fall in the line. And I don't really know much about it other than it's like about this girl who gets accepted to this school. It's like a college, and weird things are going down. It's supposed to be maybe dark academia vibes, but just like a really weird story that I've heard an interesting ending. Maybe like I think it might be what's the word? Vague, anonymous? No. Oh my gosh. Open-ended. Wow. So I think that I don't know how I'm gonna fall on this like spectrum of love it or hate it, but I'm excited to give it a try because I feel like I have to know, you know? Then we've got The Pallbearers Club by Paul Tremblay. This is a kind of friendship story where you're following a kind of memoir story of this guy talking about his life with his friend Mercy, and he is going through and telling you why he thinks that she was a vampire. And then there's going to be little snippets where she puts in her own thoughts. So these are like at the end of chapters, and then she'll like insert stuff. And I really like that kind of storytelling. I've read the Theodore Goss series and this one. And it does that where there's like interruptions in the narrative from the characters, and I really enjoy that. So I'm hoping I really like this, and I think a vampire story is always for me, but I've heard this is much more a friendship story, so I'm going to try to keep that in mind while reading. Then I've got When the Reckoning Comes by Latanya McQueen. I don't know why I always want to say when comes the reckoning. Don't know why. So this is following Mira, and she grew up with these two friends. So her and her friend Jessie are black, and their other friend Celine is white, and this is like I think 10 years after their friendship. Something goes down in high school, and then years later, Celine invites them to a plantation wedding and doesn't understand why that would be hard for them. And also because something happened at this plantation to them that they don't really talk about. So it's kind of supposed to be dual timeline, but I'm not positive about that. But it's also supposed to be like a ghost story because when they're at this plantation wedding, some strange things start to occur and there might be some ghosts taking vengeance. So I think this is going to be a hard story, but I think also it sounds so good, and I've only heard good reviews on it, so I'm really excited to check this out. And it's going to be a quick read, so I think it'll be perfect to just like fly through. And then we've got Jennifer McMahon, The Children on the Hill. This is supposed to be like kind of a Frankenstein story. So this is supposed to be about a woman who, I think she runs this like psychiatry place, but her and her 2 grandkids live on the property in another house, and one day she brings a girl home and brings her into their family, but then some weird stuff starts happening with the girl, and they're gonna have to figure out what's really going on here. And it sounds really good. I love Frankenstein, and so anything Frankenstein retelling, because I also like retellings, I think I'm going to enjoy this. So I'm excited to get my hands on this one, and I haven't read a Jennifer McMahon before, but if I like her, then I definitely will read more of her stuff because I have another book by her on my TBR. So these are all the books I'm going to be reading. Can't wait to get to them and let you know my thoughts. So I think I'm going to start with this one and just dive right in and let you know what I think. So I totally meant to check in sooner, but I am reading The Children on the Hill by Jennifer McMahon. I thought this one would be the best to start with for me. It was the one I was most in the mood for. This was the perfect book to start with because I totally was going to update, and then I've already gotten through to 138 pages. So like I'm flying through this. It's not a long book. I've been listening to an audiobook. I listened on my way to work and some on the way back, and I've just been like flying through this. I really, really am enjoying this. It's following multiple perspectives. So first we have V, who is in this perspective, she's 13, and so it's her account of her grandma bringing home this girl and figuring out what's going on with this girl and what her grandma's up to. And then there's these chapters that are from this book of monsters that her brother and Iris, who her grandma brought home to them, and Vi like put together, and there's little snippets, and then there's little snippets of people writing articles about what happened at this house and this mental institution like back in the 70s. And then there is the 2019 timeline where you have Lizzie, who formerly was Vi, but she's changed her name, and it's her perspective, and she's a monster hunter now, and she's hunting this monster who she says is her sister, and is like trying to figure out what's going on. So I really enjoy all the multiple timelines. I thought maybe it would be like too much, but I do like multiple timelines and I do like multiple POVs, but sometimes it just isn't done in a way that keeps me engaged, where this, I feel like every time I flip to different perspectives, I am intrigued. I think that there's just a lot of tension being built in every aspect. Now, I don't think this is going to be like the twistiest horror, but I don't also think that that's the point of this. I just think horror doesn't need as many twists as like in a thriller. And so I'm really just liking the pacing of this and just kind of hearing the story, even though I feel like I kind of know where it's going. I'm still really sucked in. And I think I'm going to be reading this more tonight and hopefully get like most of the way through, if not finish, because I'm just really, really enjoying this. So that was my first book, and I totally meant to check in earlier, but I'm loving it. I am going to keep reading, and I will let you know what I think later. Hello, this is Editing Brie here, and I realized that I'd never wrapped up my thoughts on this. Well, actually I did, but I think the footage was lost because I distinctly remember talking about the ending and the just like my final thoughts, because they did change a little bit. But I don't know where that footage went. So I finished, and I think overall I gave this 3.5 stars, maybe 3 stars more like. I see why people call this a cozy horror. It definitely felt a little more thriller vibes than full horror, but I think it's a good like beginner book. Some of the reveals I found obvious, and I know that horror, you don't rely as much like thrillers on the like twists and stuff, but I do feel like outside of the twists, the horror elements weren't very strong. So I didn't feel like really scared at all. But I enjoyed the writing, and even though I knew the twist, I enjoyed the story overall. So I just think it's a good, easy horror. It's one that I would probably think is really widely recommendable. It's just like a middle of the road horror for me that I could say is a good palate cleanser. I definitely read a lot of dark books in this horror vlog, a lot of books that make you think, and this one was just one that's just fun. You know, you just pick it up and you kind of have a good time, and very, very easy to read. So I definitely will be picking up more Jennifer McMahon because I can see the cozy horror vibes, which I am finding is actually a lot of my taste. I like things that are not so dark, but I like the darker, mysterious elements to things. Multiple genres, but just the cozy side of genres, I've been finding I've really been enjoying. I enjoyed it. I think the ending too wasn't my favorite, but I didn't hate it. It's not my preferred ending, I guess. Overall, I think I said a 3.5. That seems right. It was a fun time. I flew through it, had a good time, just didn't love it. So yeah, those are my thoughts, and let's get back into the video. So I can't remember if I told you or not, but the next book I've picked up is The Hacienda by Isabel Canas. And this is about a woman who goes, and she kind of is in a predicament where she needs to marry so that her and her mom can have a better life, because where they're living right now is just not a good place for them. So she marries this guy, Rodolfo, and goes to his house in the like countryside and is going to be the woman of this hacienda, and she is trying to bring her mom there eventually. And when she gets there, she isn't very welcomed, and then some weird things with the house start happening, and she believes it could be haunted. And then there's a priest that is also part of the story, and he is going to be brought in to help deal with the house. I'm only 125 pages in, and I've been reading this and I've already had like dreams about haunted house. It's very eerie. I feel like the way that this is portrayed is just like the perfect creepy gothic vibe. So if you like gothic horror, I feel like this just has that vibe, like where it's just so unsettling and it's scary. Like the house, things that are happening in the house itself is like kind of freaky, but it's less about being pop out scary and more of just like this eeriness and like the things she's finding in the house and how no one will talk to her or talk about it, and she kind of feels like she's going insane. I just think it's building this suspense perfectly, and I'm loving it so far. I'm flying through it and I just can't stop thinking about it and just want to know what's going to happen with this house. I really feel like this is a perfect book for spooky season, and right now I have no complaints about it, so we'll see how far I get through. And this is set in 1823, so it's also historical, which I always love, so perfect like gothic horror for me right now, and I'm really happy I picked it up.
Blue dude, blue moon, kinda mysterious, shaded with someone I'm not really into. Do you need to fix it? Talking bullshit. It's hard to see you when your eyes look dull. Who's gonna save you? Who's gonna make you not blue? Not blue. Blue dude, bad mood, sorta witty and jaded, but let's not talk about you. Your coyote song on a rerun. Are you hound dog tired singing all night long? Who's gonna save you? Who's gonna make you not blue?
Okay, sorry if this lighting is a little dark. It's the best I can do at the moment. But I wanted to say I finished The Hacienda by Isabel Canas, and I think I'm gonna give this 5 stars. I really, really love this. I can see where this is not for everyone. It's definitely like a slower haunted house story, and if you're not that into haunted house stories, and there is like a romance subplot in here that might not be for some horror readers, but I just really had a good time. It creeped me out from start to finish, and I really liked that you got dual perspectives. So you're getting the perspective of Andreas, who is a priest, and then you're also getting the perspective of Beatrice, who is just married into this family and is noticing a lot of creepy things going on in this house. And I really liked the twists in here because I think they were unexpected, at least for me, for a horror book. And I just think the slow burn creepiness throughout the whole book just made it so intense for me. I could not put it down. I had over 150 pages left last night, and I just had to know what was going to happen. Like, I could not stop reading it until I found out. I think if you were maybe newer into horror, like maybe this would be a good gothic horror to try, because I think that it's got the creep factor if you're looking for that to get into horror, but it didn't feel over the top. Like, it felt a little more accessible to me, but I did have nightmares from it, so I could be very susceptible to that, but still, I don't know. So while this is a gothic horror and is very much has all of that weaved in, and that's like the core of the story, it does also deal with colonialism and like the effects of colonialism and how generations have been affected. And this is set in Mexico, if I never said that before, but it's just talking about the effects on the people and what colonialism has done and how it still impacts their lives. And there's a lot of talk about like the caste system and things like that. And I just really like that commentary in here. And she even says, like in the back of the book, that it's a historical fiction. It's not, everything in here is not portrayed 100% to the history of the times. And she talks about different books that you can read if you really want to learn the history. So she recommends reading Everyday Life and Politics in 19th Century Mexico, Men, Women, and War by Mark Wasserman, and The Women of Mexico City, 1790 to 1857 by Sylvia Marina Arome. And those are just some. And then she also references some more. So she has a lot of like resources for those, but she talks about how she wanted to tell a horror story and also talk about some of the historical things like colonialism and the caste system and things like that in a way that is accurate but is at the core still a horror story. She did that so well. Like it was such a well-crafted book, and I just really fell for Beatrice and Andres and their struggle that they were going through and trying to like get out of this nightmare of a haunted house. I really loved it from start to finish. So it's a 5 for me. So that's great. I'm really happy I found another new horror that I really like. And I think every time I find a horror that's 5-star, I'm kind of starting to recognize what I might like and what I want to pick up going forward in the horror genre. And I think gothic horror could definitely be for me. So now let's talk about my next book, which is When the Reckoning Comes by Latanya McQueen. I am currently at the 65 page mark, so I'm not quite halfway through, but I'm making some progress. I've been listening to this on audiobook, and I do really, really enjoy the audiobook. I think that the narrator is just doing a really good job capturing the feel of the book. So this is about a black woman named Mira, and she gets a call one day from her white friend, Celine, who she grew up with, and Celine is getting married, and she tells her that she's getting married on this plantation, and Mira accepts to go to this because also Jesse, their other friend, he is also going to be going, and I think she kind of wants to reconnect with him, even though she feels very uneasy about this plantation wedding. And also there is some unknown event that happened in their past that is related to this plantation, and so she's very hesitant to go back there, and she is kind of out of the town they grew up in, and there's flashbacks to when she was growing up in this town and when she's now in the present day going back to this wedding. So it's about like their friendship from before, but also what led up to whatever happens at this plantation, which is kind of eerie. We don't really know. And then the present day where she's going back to this wedding, as this plantation has been like turned into kind of like a theme park and a wedding venue. There's also these chapters that you get where it's in italics in the book, and it is like very ominous sounding, and it's kind of like from a third party. You don't really know who, but it kind of seems to be talking about the past and not like Mira's past, but like past in like slavery times. And all of that is, I think, all going to come together, and it's a very short book. I think it's like one of those stories where it's very easy to just jump into, and she just already, I feel, connected to the story and the events. Like it's just very accessible to get into and just start reading. Like I didn't feel like I needed a ton of like setup. It's like definitely a hard read because you're reading about obviously this like time of slavery and this woman having to go to this wedding where she's now having to see these reenactments being done of slaves and this like plantation, and it's a way of like sugarcoating what happened because it's just makes it seem like it wasn't as horrible as it was. And so she's also having to like face that, and it's just, there's a lot this book is unpacking, and I'm really enjoying it. I really think that it's a good read. It's a hard read, but I think it's a powerful one. And for a horror, I'm just really excited to see the horror aspects come more to light, because I think that right now it's a lot of building up to whatever happened, and I'm just really interested to see how the wedding side of things and the horror, I feel like ghosty elements, like how they come together. So I will come back with more thoughts when I have them and let you know. But so far, it has been really good. Hello, I wanted to come and wrap up my thoughts for When the Reckoning Comes. I finished this and I think I'm going to give it 4 stars. I really, really enjoyed it, but I think that actually I have been liking short horror, but in this I felt like there could have been a little bit longer because I feel like there were certain things that felt a little abrupt that I wanted more conclusion to. And I liked the ending, but I do feel like it felt a little rushed and just based on the like pace of the rest of the story. I think that this is a really good discussion about the past of slavery and how much our country tries to forget what happened. The setting of a plantation wedding just shows that a lot, and also the events throughout the story really impacts the impact that slavery had, that I think is often overlooked in a lot of ways now. And I just thought the conversations were really interesting in here, and also just the setting itself and the horror aspects were really good as well. Like, I was thoroughly creeped out the entire time, and just like as the events were unfolding in the end, it was just like so horrific. And so I think it really nailed the horror elements, and I would really recommend this if you haven't. It's definitely like a tough read, but I think it's so necessary. But also I just think it's very well written and just a really good horror book, and definitely creeped me out, and I had to pause for a little bit and go to a little less horrific type book after this, because this one really disturbed me. But I would highly recommend, and I'm super happy I read it, and it's been one I've been wanting to get to, and I'm really glad that it held up for me as much as I was anticipating it. So on to the next book. I finished When the Reckoning Comes very late in the night, and then I went to work and I actually flew through this audiobook. I did not think that I would get as far as I did, but I'm about 110 pages in to the Pallbearers Club. I've heard this doesn't feel like a lot of horror because it's just slower paced and it's more a look at a friendship, so I thought this would be a good horror to pick up right after that one. And this is just following a boy. Well, it's a man telling a memoir about what happened when he was a boy and how he thought his friend Mercy was a vampire. And I can't tell if he still thinks that, but it's his memoir basically. And then you're getting input from Mercy. So she'll write stuff in red. And then at the end of each chapter, she gives her full thoughts about the chapter and what he did with the chapter. And I find it interesting so far. I wouldn't say I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best book ever. I feel like right now it's landing around a 3-star where I'm like interested to see where it goes, but I'm not super invested in it. I just hit like the first inklings of where it could get horror filled, but I really don't think that this book's gonna go there. I really do think it's like what people say, where it's much more of a story about friendship. I think I could enjoy it, and I'm not having a bad time. I just really am not feeling anything towards the book. I don't really love the narration of the audiobook, but it's not terrible. I think that's part of the reason why I didn't connect, because when I read it, I think I do enjoy it more. But yeah, so those are my thoughts. I'm only 100 pages in out of to like 75, so I'm halfway about, and I'll probably finish this soon, but I wanted to give you my initial thoughts. Okay, so it's been a bit, and I've been trying, but I'm gonna DNF the Pallbearers Club. I took out my bookmark already. I made it to like 150 pages. Yeah, around 150 pages. And so I only had like probably 30% more. I can't do it. I knew that this was going to be more friendship than horror, but it's been only about friendship, but it's not even a friendship story that I'm even invested in. And there's a lot of things in this that I just don't understand. Like with the main character, there's like paragraphs where it just talks about his back and how he had to get back surgery, and multiple times it just like goes really in depth about his back surgery and stuff like that, where I don't know, I'm just having a hard time caring. Yeah, just picking it up every time. I just kind of read for a little bit and then I put it down because I just don't care. And I feel really bad about that. It's just not, I just don't think it's a book for me. We've had one instance of her potentially being a vampire. The whole book is just a look into this guy's mind as he's writing like a memoir. And I just don't feel like I care at all. Like it just isn't interesting to me. So I've been trying. I've been really trying, and I think I'm gonna have to DNF it because I can't do it anymore. But the other reason why I knew it was time was because I decided to pick up Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas, and immediately starting this, I like just wanted to be reading this. I just enjoying this a ton, and it just showed me like how much I wasn't enjoying the Pallbearers Club. So I'm 100 pages into Catherine House, and I'm really enjoying it. It is definitely weird where you don't really know what's going on. When I originally heard that from people, I thought that the language itself was going to be confusing, like I was going to have a hard time following the story itself, and I don't think it's that. It's not writing where you can't understand. It's very easy to understand and get into, but it's just that you don't know what's going on in the school this whole time. Everything's very vague, and it's just kind of like an ominous feeling, which is something I'm really enjoying. And I'm on page 101, so I'm almost to year 2 because it's not in chapters, it's in year 1, year 2, year 3. And year 2 starts in 20 pages, so I only have that much more too. I'm on year 2. It's weird, but in a good way. I like it. I want to know what's happening. There's got like a mind control almost aspect to it that I'm interested in, and I can see why people love it. I think that the ending is kind of what gets people like to love it or hate it. So I'm really interested to see where I end up, because right now I'm having a really good time with this. I really like it. I like the eeriness. I like the school setting. And I don't think it feels exactly dark academia necessarily, but it just feels weird. And I'm enjoying it. And I'm listening to the audiobook, and I would really recommend that as well if you like audiobooks. So I'm going to continue this and finish it hopefully soon. So I'll let you know what I think when I am further along. But so far, loving it. So I finished Catherine House, and oh wow, I have mixed feelings. I feel like I have to give it 5 stars. So full disclosure, this is like several days after I finished this. I put it down and I read it at night, and then I don't like to review the books at night, like right after I've read them, because I feel like I just don't have coherent thoughts. So I usually wait till the next day, and then like a couple days keep going by, and I don't know what to say about this book, but it's stuck with me. There were so many parts of this book that were slow and just like about school and, you know, being in college and doing friend things with this underlying eeriness. And that is similar to this book, completely different premises, but you just don't know what's happening through this, but it's just like a sense of dread the whole time, or like a sense of something's wrong, but everyone kind of thinks it's normal. This has that vibe. I loved that book, and I think I love this book as well for that, because it was weird. When people say it was weird, I thought, oh, it's gonna be weird to read, like I'm not gonna understand what I'm reading. No, I understood what I was reading. It was just weird. And I feel like there's just this vibe of everything seems normal, but then there'll be these weird scenes where stuff is happening that like that's not normal, but everybody in the book feels like it's kind of normal, and they don't really question things. And Inez herself is kind of a flawed character. She's going through a lot, and she's kind of an interesting perspective to follow, because she's not necessarily a character you root for 100%, but I did find myself rooting for her, but she has just so many flaws, which I think makes her such a good character. And yeah, it just gets creepier and creepier, but not over the top. And the ending, I can see why people wouldn't like it, but actually I think it was well done. I enjoyed it, and I think it kept with the tone of the book a lot. So I really feel like I have to give this 5 stars, because the more I sit with it, the more I just keep thinking about it and how weird it was. It just sits with me, you know? I have to give it 5 stars. It was great. I did not think I was going to be in this boat, because I just don't particularly read a ton of weird books. At least I don't think I do. And so I didn't know how this was going to go, but I loved it. So here are all the books. So let me do them in order of ranking. So this is least favorite to favorite. So DNF, we all know, it did not go well for me. This one I think is a really good fun horror, if you could call it that. Like, it's still horror, don't get me wrong, but it's just a easier time. This one, I felt all the things while reading this. I think it's a really good story, and like what it's trying to tell is so important, and yeah, I would highly recommend it. Then Catherine House, so weird. I feel like this was like a ride. If you want to go on like a crazy wild ride, Catherine House for sure. And then the Hacienda, I just feel like it speaks to my reading taste so much, like the gothic, the ghost, paranormal aspects to this were amazing. I have no complaints in this book. I wouldn't change a thing. It was the perfect kind of horror book that I was looking for. So I definitely will be trying to pick up more by this author, but also because I think this is her debut, but I will pick up more when she comes out with more, and more like this. So like Mexican Gothic's going to be on my list for sure. So yeah, these are the books. I am really glad I did this. I'm a little burnt out on horror, I'm not going to lie. Horror can be a heavy thing because it a lot of times is having harder topics that it's exploring through the genre of horror, and I think that's what makes it so great, but it just can be heavy. So I am in need of some cozy books and a cozy time. So I'm going to be doing that. But I'm really happy I read these, and I feel like I've honed even more of my horror taste since I'm so new. I'm just really finding out what I like in horror, and that's great. So thank you for watching. I want to know your thoughts on any of these books if you've read them, but also, is there any horror you've been picking up this year, or are you a horror reader? Like, do you tend to enjoy horror, or are you someone who's a little nervous to get into horror, and why are you nervous to get into horror? I would love to know. So please leave a comment down below, and I will see you next time, and thank you for watching.